Hi, I'm so excited to meet all of you. My name is Ann Morrison. I am a professional actress, a singer, a director, a playwright. I am the artistic director and co founder of a theater company called Sarah Sola Productions, and that's dedicated to the development and presentation of solo theater artists. That's someone who stands on stage and does a whole show all by themselves, whether it's a solo play, that's either biographical about somebody else or autobiographical about themselves, or they might tell their story in a cabaret setting, so they're a solo musical in a way, or they might represent solo work in physical theater, meaning dance or mime or circus art, combined with maybe spoken word, where it's poetry, or they might do comedy, stand up, all kinds of things. But that's not the only thing I do. I've done three Broadway shows. My first one was in 1981, a Stephen Sondheim musical called Merrily We Roll Along. It didn't last very long on Broadway, but it was an incredible experience. And because of my love for solo work, I created a solo musical that won an award called Merrily from Center Stage. And it's about my memories, my emotional memories of standing center stage during the 6 weeks of previews on a Broadway stage. And it's a tribute to the people who wrote that show and created it with me, which was fun. And interestingly, you may know that Merrily Roll Along is opened on Broadway after 42 years with a different cast and different writing since then. So I have mixed feelings about all of that. We can talk about that when I finally get to meet you. But they've asked me to come in to work with you guys in the next 4 classes coming up soon, and then come up and see you guys in December so we can work one-on-one physically with this next program, which is fun because there's a line that I say in my solo play. I am not defined by my past. I am always thinking about being in the moment. So therefore, I am on the brink of the next. That moment in present time where you're just immediately thinking about the next, the next, the next, the next. And for those of us who are considered different in the sense that I'm a person with dyslexia. So I grew up during a time when they didn't know what that word was. And so learning difference was a concept that people just didn't understand then. And I felt like I was in child abuse through the educational programs because they didn't understand what was going on. It wasn't until I was an adult that they had a word for it. And once I knew what that was, I developed a great pride and excitement for who I was. And I loved the way my mind worked. I loved the way that I would process differently than everybody else. And how I had to cope in the universe with that. And I know you can relate to that in a different level. So I'm excited. I've also had a theater company called Kaleidoscope, which worked with persons with developmental disabilities. And that was back in 1985 up until, about 3 or 4 years ago. I left after a while and came in and out because I went back and did another Broadway show and then another one. But it was great fun. And what I loved about creating that program, it was based on musical theater, which is probably my forte. I do other kinds of theater, but that's what I'm most known for is musical theater. And I felt being a person with dyslexia and being a person at the age of 13 surviving a car accident with a brain injury, I was fascinated about the brain and how it reheals and reinterprets itself and reinterprets the universe. So that fascinated me, and I felt that musical theater was a whole brain experience because you are dealing with language, you are dealing with music, you are dealing with poetry, you are dealing with your emotional body, you are dealing with human behavior, you are dealing with all these things to create an art form. And it felt like you were really exercising your whole brain opposed to maybe just a play that focused more on the left side of my brain dealing with language, but where I could bring my right brain in with more spatial work and movement and music. I felt like everything was connecting. And for me, that was gold, you know? So I felt that if I could bring musical theater, a whole brain experience, to a population of people at the time I didn't know who that would be, that might benefit from that in a sense of healing, connecting to yourself, connecting to your community. We discovered it was going to be with persons with developmental disabilities. And I just grew to really hone in my own communication skills as well. Um, then we started creating a thing called devised theater. We were devising it. We were creating as we were going on. I know you may have talked about that what we're going to do together is create a performance art, but I would like to replace that more with the idea of thinking of devised theater. Devised meaning that we come together as a group of creative people coming up with ideas to create a piece of theater. So we are devising something to move forward, opposed to having a script handed to us and recreating the text, the music that's on the page there. We are creating it. We are devising it, opposed to just performance art, which could mean, and we still could, add multimedia or visual art, or performance art involves the audience, but bringing the audience into the experience and being in their face. I think we probably work better if we think in terms of devise theater. We are going to come together and devise something. And I'm just so excited that you were able to fill out something like this. Look, Erin, I got your name on the front, right? It helped me get a better sense of how you felt you needed to be supported, what you feel is important, other things that might help support you, and what people like about you. So much so that I want all of us to do this. I want to fill this out every time I'm doing something, because I think everybody needs to understand we're all so different, right? So thank you for that. It's really great. And I noticed a couple of things in there that when we have a class, we're going to start working on the very first day for me to get to know you and how you might want to express your truth of your disability, to let people know how you tick, how you think, how you feel, and how do we do that in art? Because this is theater art. It's not a visual art, although we can add visual art if we want to. We can have all that happening behind us. We can bring it in somehow. But this is performance art in the sense that we are on stage performing. We are theater artists. We are devised theater artists coming together to create something. So therefore, in theater, we like to, what do we want to say? You know, and how do we find that as an art form instead of going and doing a TED Talk, you know, where you're standing there and sharing your ideas with a TED Talk audience that has its very specific way of doing things, or standing in front of a microphone and doing a moth thing. And I don't know if you know about moth, but moth is really fantastic. People stand up there and they have to tell a true story that might be based on a topic that people are talking about. And that's a lot of fun. But it's not necessarily theater. Theater, what we say, is heightened in some way. It's heightened by, maybe we heighten ourselves and we tell an autobiographical story. We are thinking in terms of heightening ourselves. We become our own character. You know, when I go on stage to do a solo piece where I tell my personal story, and I might incorporate music with it because I like solo musicals. I create music along with my storytelling. People will say, oh, you are Cabaret Annie. I'm telling my truth, but there's something heightened about that. And we'll talk about that more in class. So that's what makes it more juicy and fun, is we get to stand on stage and share our truth. But how do we get to make this theatrical? And that's what we're going to discover together in the next 4 classes. So again, I'm a professional actor. I've been on Broadway. I am now living in Sarasota, Florida. I have theater companies. I'm in the schools teaching all kinds of things. And now I'm going to be teaching with you, and I get to see you personally in December. I'm very excited. I am very accessible. I'm going to make sure that you have my email, and so that you can always contact me about stuff. I love Zoom. So if you ever want to like just have a one-on-one with me on Zoom, where it's one thing to type words, but for me, I also like to see people's faces. Sometimes that's too much information for people, but I also like to hear the sound of a voice. Because they all give me clues to better understand than, when people like to text, that's great. But then I don't get to hear the voice, and that gives me more information, or understanding if their face is sad or excited about something. It just gives me more information. So that's what I like. So I need to find out if those are fine with you. Obviously, it is, because we're all going to be Zooming together. And that's great. And I noticed that some of you are looking to connect with people more. So maybe we might devise some of you doing a comedy sketch together. Ailey, I know that you love musical theater. And maybe you might want to think about terms eventually creating a solo cabaret. So maybe your piece of devised theater might incorporate going into a song. And I got some ideas about that I want to share with you. And I know that some of you are interested in, who is it who likes jazz? I'll look later. Who likes jazz? Maybe we could do a fun thing where the underscoring is with jazz, but the beat poems, the beat poets of the 50s and going into the 60s, that jazz was a part of it. Maybe you might tell your story in more of a beat poem sort of way. I'm not saying that we're going to do that, but there are things we're going to explore. So we're going to have fun just figuring out stuff. So our first class, I'll send you information to kind of give you an idea of what so you're not too terribly surprised. And I will probably give you a prompt in which to inspire writing. And I'll give you the idea of what the prompt most likely is going to be, so it's not a total surprise if you need time to think about it. But it will be, don't write it, we're going to write it in class, so we're having real-time experience of it, and then you can always take it away and explore more. It's just an idea of how do we work more in the moment, and then how do we take that was in the moment and take it out of time and work on it that way as well. So I'm excited to talk to you all, and I hope you're going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm already having fun just having this presentation for you. Bye.